Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about Guide to Contracts. Now, some of you, I hope not all of you, might not find contracts nearly as exciting as I do, but they are. They are probably one of the most useful things you could possibly ever invest your time in because of how awesome they are. And a lot of people think of them as, oh, that's so boring. I don't want to deal with the contract. And how many of you are with me on this one? Those terms of service that you scroll 50 pages on and you just go click, even though you have no idea what it said and you don't care. But courts have found that terms of service are viable contracts. You agreed to them. So in this guide for you, just keep that in mind, that just because you may not find them nearly as exciting as I do, doesn't mean that they don't apply to your business or to your personal life. And as I like to remind people, that before you sign something, maybe you should consult an attorney because you never know what that contract could say. Now, we're going to do something a little different today. We're going to skip the intro entirely. And I know you're like, well, why are you even bothering telling me? But I'm trying something. So hope this will engage you, I guess would be the best way of saying it. The reason why, and before we get into contracts, I want you to think about these in context of how you can grow your business, right? How you can make your business better, or how you can make your life better if you're not in business for yourself. Because at the end of the day, if you're not paying attention to the details in your life, how is it that you're going to achieve those things? Now, I'm not suggesting that you have to be involved with contracts in such the way that I am on a regular basis, but this lesson is going to give you a good high level, that's what this is all about, high level idea of what you're looking at when you're looking at a contract, rather than just being, well, that's a piece of paper with words on it, which I totally get. But I'm gonna go a little personal here, okay? And the reason why is because I want you to understand where I'm coming from. This is important for this reason. Today was my mother passed away 6 years ago today. Okay. It's had its moments. Okay, we'll just, like I said, I'm going to get serious here. I'm not trying to be a downer. But one of the reasons why I became an attorney was because of my parents' business. My mom and my dad, they owned their own carpet cleaning business. And they didn't have an attorney, and they didn't have someone looking over their contracts. And there were quite a few issues where their business was drastically negatively impacted because they didn't choose to review their contracts or even have one. They had invoices with very little language, very little information. Excuse me. So the problem is when you do that, when you think about those issues, in a very real sense, what I'm talking about here is not just about a contract, but how this affects you and how it affects your family. Are you being proactive? My parents had lots of different businesses growing up as a kid: vinyl repair, upholstery repair, carpet cleaning. My mom sold Avon. Lots and lots of different jobs growing up. And they were okay entrepreneurs. They would eke out a living, but it was always a struggle because they didn't learn some of these lessons. And as a child, I didn't pay for it in the literal senses of money, but I paid for it in the sense that things that other families had, we didn't have. And I'm not dissing my parents because of that. But with the internet and so many resources out there, there's no reason for your business not to be more successful. There's no reason for you not to have more than what you have. And so when I became an attorney, that was my goal. That was my purpose, is to bring you, to help you grow your business in a safe and secure way to keep you in business for as long as you want to be, and not have to exit just because something bad happens or because people aren't paying you, which I totally understand. When I discuss these things about contracts, my goal is to help you stay in business for as long as humanly possible, to be able to pass this on to your family if that's what you choose, right? I'm talking about keeping your choices in, not in check, but keeping your choices to allow you the freedom that you deserve or you want, okay? So if you're new here, I forgot, my name is Taylor Darcy from Think Legal, where I help you create the business of your dreams, whatever that may be. I go live Monday through Friday, mostly. I'll be honest, I miss a day or two. I try. It's a struggle sometimes, but I go Monday through Friday at 11. So if you're interested, please tune in live to get your questions answered and to discuss legal things about your business, as well as other types of thoughts about business. Don't feel like that we just have to talk about legal stuff. There's lots of issues that businesses come up that are not legal related. So please feel free to tune in, and I'm happy to talk with you about them. So number one, you got to know that certain laws govern certain parts of contracts, or not certain parts of contracts, types of contracts. Number one, a contract for goods is governed by the UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. Okay. So if you're dealing with that, it's important that you're referencing the correct sections of the UCC and that you handle that appropriately. They have different rules, different requirements than do, and the next group is what are called goods or services. Sorry. Service contracts. Service contracts are governed by common law, so which is also known as case law. Okay. Those two types are the very broad categories in which all of other contracts fit into. So look at it as like an umbrella, right? Like, okay, you have your goods over here and you have your services over here, and they fit underneath one of the two umbrellas, except, and there's always an except in law, except when they don't. And this is where hybrid contracts come into play. A hybrid contract is where it's for goods and services commingled in there. Okay. Now, which law will apply? Well, it depends on whether it's largely a service contract or whether it's largely a goods contract, right? So if it's a combination of those two things, then it's going to be, it just depends on the proportion, right? So if it's mostly a service contract, then common law is going to apply. If it's mostly a good service or goods contract, then the UCC is going to apply. So keep those types of thoughts in mind when you're dealing with contracts that you may or may not have any type of say in what happens with them. So those are kind of like the umbrellas. Now they get merged, right? When you're thinking about that hybrid contract where you're underneath one umbrella, or you're kind of like got two umbrellas there. And anyway, you get the analogy that contracts have a unique, thing, because most other times it's either one or the other. There's not a lot, but in this instance, there is that opportunity. Now, most contracts fall underneath what's called a bilateral contract. Bilateral meaning two-way contract. So that means that both of you have to do something or give up something in order for there to be a contract. Now, it's the legal equivalent of quid pro quo. This for that, okay? Money for this service, time for this money, right? Whatever it may be. So that's a bilateral contract. Most contracts fall underneath a bilateral contract. Very rare do unilateral contracts, which is next. Okay. A unilateral contract is a one-way contract until accepted. So a unilateral contract is an advertisement for a vehicle or an advertisement in general. They don't have an obligation to fulfill that. There's some exceptions, but this is the very simple version of it. You don't have an obligation to sell something at a price unless you put that in there, which is why, like, for instance, you'll see in advertisements where they'll be like 1 at this price or 5 at this price or whatever, fill in the blank, whatever number it is that they have at that price. And so if you look in the fine print, that's where that's at as far as an advertisement. Or you'll hear it on the radio and they'll say, and it'll be that, and you're like, what the flip is that, right? Like, you miss it. That's why they put that in there, is because it's a unilateral contract, so they have to abide by the same things. Now, it becomes, because offer, acceptance, considerations still apply in a unilateral contract, it becomes binding upon the other party once you've accepted that. So it doesn't bind them to it, okay, until you accept, until you say that. So unilateral is kind of a unique, doesn't happen very often, and most people don't enforce it. Just to be true. Implied contract. Here's another one. This is another type of contract that you're going to want to pay attention to. An implied contract is when you buy a good that you're expecting that good to do something because that's that type of good. For instance, if you were to buy an axe to cut down a tree, well, let's do a chainsaw. Chainsaw is a better option. I don't know why. Let's just go with it. So that chainsaw, you're expecting it to be able to cut down a tree, right? Like the chain is supposed to work. So you've got the blade, you've got the motor inside of it. You've got, if it's gas powered, you've got the crank. You're expecting that when you buy a chainsaw, it's going to be able to cut down a tree. That's fair, right? I mean, that's fair. You're not expecting it to be able to be used as a sledgehammer. At least you shouldn't, theoretically. So that chainsaw, if it fails to cut down a tree, not through anything you've done, like you didn't use it to pry open a door, okay? Now, if you're fire department, that may... Anyway, point is, right? Like that chainsaw is meant to cut down a tree, but it's implied, the implied contract of that chainsaw, of the person that sold you that chainsaw, that it works, that there's a warranty on it, that there's something that says that this is going to work for my need. And if it doesn't work, well, you can hold the seller accountable for that. You don't have to just eat the cost because, oh, nope. Now, the law used to be what was called caveat emptor, or buyer beware, which basically says, nope, too bad, so sad, you bought it, you're on your own. That hasn't been the law for a while. You can disclaim things, and that's a whole different topic for a different day, but you can disclaim stuff, but it's important to remember that even if you disclaim something, that there needs to be it needs to be big, bold, and in someone's face that you disclaimed that something had or did not have something. So if I'm looking at buying a chainsaw and I don't care that a chainsaw works because I'm using it as a prop in a movie, then I need you to disclaim that to me, right? Like, I'm looking for a prop for a movie. I need a chainsaw. I don't care if it works, okay? But I still need you to disclaim that to me. I need you to warn me that this chainsaw doesn't work, or that it's jammed, or that there's something about it that does not make it like a normal chainsaw, right? So that's the only way, like, for instance, a warranty doesn't apply, is when it's something of that nature and it's disclaimed, like, in clear, bold, 12 font letter. It's got to be very clear. Even then, if that thing breaks and causes someone harm, then that's a different matter entirely. Then there's a products liability and tort issue that we're not even going to get into. But from a warranty perspective, that's an implied contract, warranty for goods. The next one, and this is kind of like one thing that Hollywood always drives me nuts with, is that when you're watching a show, oh, an oral contract. Oral contract isn't valid. Yeah, it is. It is valid under certain circumstances. Now, the problem with oral contracts is that it can become a he said, she said, whatever, fill in the blank, right? Becomes your word against theirs. So whose story is better at that point, right? So one of my favorite phrases, and if you've watched any of my videos, I usually say something to the effect of, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. Okay. So although oral contracts are valid, I'm not saying they're not valid, a better way, right? There's good, better, and best. So the better way is to have everything in writing, which is called an express contract. Okay. You are clear in your expectations for that situation. You are clear that the quid pro quo that's going to happen is accurate, right? So an express contract puts it in writing. That's a simple, very simple version of what an express contract is. And the more clear you are in your writing, in your contracts, the happier you will be. And I know that goes counterintuitive. Like, a lot of people are like, that's insane. I don't want to spend that much time on contracts. But I can tell you right now that having having something with, let's see, there we go. Let's do that. Having something with your that clearly shows the intention of the parties is a much better way of going than worrying about a contract, an oral contract. You will be so much happier if you make those types of choices. Now, here's a little secret, and I want you to, let's see here. We're going to do this. The better your contract, the less likely you will use it. Okay. That's why it's so important. If you have a bad contract, you are more likely going to use that contract. Sorry. Because here's the thing. When you use a bad contract, someone, an attorney, similar to myself, but not, is going to take the opportunity to take advantage of that. Because contracts are what's called construed against the drafter. So if you draft a really poor contract and then expect the other party to be bound to it, it makes it really easy to get out of. I've had multiple cases in the past where this was true. They thought by drafting a poor contract, or they thought by leaving words out of a contract, that it would be better for them. That's just not accurate. Okay. So you want to keep in mind, there we go. You want to keep in mind, the clearer you are in your contract, the happier you will be. The better the contract, the less likely you will be to use it. So put the details. The devil truly is in the details. You will be a lot happier of a business owner if you put those details in the contract. Okay. So the next thing is we're going to talk about some negative contracts, some not good contracts. And let's do that one. One of them is an unconscionable contract. An unconscionable contract is one that is so one-sided. Now there's substantive and there's procedural unconscionability. Procedural, think if you're trying to negotiate a deal with Warren Buffett, right? You're intimidated by him. You're trying to work with them. You want to learn from him. He takes advantage of you. Unconscionability is hard because, generally speaking, courts like contracts to stand. However, They recognize that there are some issues sometimes with the degree of acceptance, or not acceptance, the degree of understanding of the contract. So, for instance, if you were doing one-on-one, Warren Buffett with John Smith, maybe. It's always a maybe. Until that court says otherwise, it's always a maybe. So an unconscionable, it has to be very one-sided. It can't just be kind of sort of unfair. You knew what you're getting yourself into. Sorry. The next type of contract is a contract of adhesion. Now, a contract of adhesion is typically it's also a one-sided contract, but think of it as a form contract that you don't get to negotiate. It's a take it or leave it contract. You don't get any negotiating with it. You don't get to redline anything. You don't get to control anything. You just get to take whatever they give you. That is what's called the contract of adhesion. It's something that it's unfair, right? Now, full disclosure, these are hard to get. Like, courts don't like doing unconscionable contracts or fighting against parties in unconscionable contracts or contracts of adhesion. Why? Because they like to keep the deal within the contract, right? They like to keep it fair. And you knew what you were getting yourself into, typically, not always, again, when you were signing it. Now, that being said, being fair in contracts, the beautiful part of contracts, and this is why I love them so much, and this is why I know you're sitting there going, this is crazy, but it's true, because you can almost contract anything you want to. I do. There are some restrictions on that. Like, you can't contract for something illegal. Like, it's always funny when you hear in the news, oh, he was a contract killer. There's no such thing. You can't contract for somebody to do something illegal. Like, it doesn't exist. There is no contract that is enforceable in any court that exists for someone that committed a crime. Like, I can't hire a hitman, right? Like, that just doesn't exist. And then the hitman take me to court because I didn't pay him. You can't do it. Courts won't enforce it for obvious reasons. Contracts between someone who is under 18, a minor, are actually valid if the minor exercises its rights after its 18th birthday. Now, that being said, if for some reason the person, the minor, chooses not to have the contract enforced against them, like, because they can, it's a voidable contract, then the party that's the hurt party, the older party, the non-minor party, can expect compensation for whatever that was that went wrong, that went bad. So not all contracts are good. I've seen a lot of bad contracts, contracts that don't protect the parties adequately, that just overall are poorly drafted. I urge you that if in this new bright 2022 year, if you haven't sat down and looked at your contract for a while, or if it's on your to-do list, please reach out to your local attorney. If you're in California, reach out to me. I'd be happy to review your contracts. I'd be happy to take a look at them and improve them and make sure that they're tidied up and given the language that you're wanting so that your interests are represented fairly. Because again, it's construed against the drafter. So that is my guide to contracts. There's some out there extra. Don't get me wrong. This isn't like everything. This is most everything, right? Like, there's going to be some exceptions out there. There's going to be things that might not apply, or that are a contract that might work for different things that are different, right? Like this is the majority, like 80 to 90% of what you'll see is right what we just talked about. There's gonna be some that you're not gonna see. Okay, that I didn't talk about, that you are gonna see that I didn't talk about, because they don't happen frequently enough for you to worry about them at this point. And if you do see those types of contracts, please, again, always get help. Get your business successful. Do your thing. You do you. Let the attorneys, let the CPAs, let us do our jobs. Let us help you and protect you. So if you've gotten value out of this video, don't forget to hit subscribe and like. And we go live Monday through Friday. Have a good one.